We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi everyone, welcome to We Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Curt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
Every week, or most weeks anyway, Curt and I get together to give you our spin on the cannabis news of the week and throw in a few comments. This week, Curt, there were a lot of little stories. As we all know, the clock is ticking down on the presidential election in under 2 weeks.
It's going to be interesting as more and more people start to bring up the word cannabis and voting, and the states start to put it out there. And we all know the POTUS does not want the cannabis crowd showing up on, was it November 6th, because he feels that does not help his chances at re-election.
Especially if it was November 3rd, Curt.
So there you go.
All right, not sure if you saw this one, Curt, but President Trump's campaign told the pro-cannabis group in Mississippi to cease and desist using his name as a supporter of that state's medical marijuana initiative.
Yeah, but think about the size of the bongs these guys had to have to take the Republican POTUS and use him and his likeness and image and quotes in their campaign to get medical marijuana passed, not in Oregon, not in California, but Mississippi. Huge bongs on those guys, and probably deserve to cease and desist at some point.
Absolutely, and we still hope and think polling is saying that that actually is a very much of a toss-up medical marijuana question on that ballot. So we'll have to see what happens on Election Day or after. In the meantime, let's go to Debra Borchardt in New York for our Green Market Report. Debra?
Thanks, guys. This week, the Flower Corporation said it was buying Terrace Global in a deal valued at $63 million. Together, the two companies have a strong balance sheet with more than $31 million in combined cash and marketable securities. Companies look like they are having no problem raising capital in the marketplace these days. This week, Harvest Health and Recreation said it entered into an agreement with 8 Capital, who will purchase on a bought deal basis 13 million units of the company at a price of roughly $2.26 per unit. This will bring gross proceeds to Harvest of roughly $30 million. Planet 13 upsized a previously announced offering of units earlier this week. The Vegas Superstore company said it was raising $20 million with selling 4.7 million units at the price of $4.30 per unit. That's in Canadian. The new deal is now 5.825 million units at the same price. It's going to bring them about $24 million instead. And that's it for this week. I'm Debra Borchardt with the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News.
Back to the ballot box now, and a few weeks ago, the State Supreme Court of Nebraska took the cannabis question off the ballot when a judge ruled that the question was just too confusing. Now, in Montana, there was actually another challenge to that state's ballot question on legality, and that state's Supreme Court denied and dismissed that lawsuit that would have stricken the question from the ballot. So, Curt, this is, of course, all these little last-ditch efforts to keep voter turnout down. It's not working.
No, definitely not. If you're putting cannabis on the ballot, people want to vote. And right now it has obviously a lot of support among Democrats and a majority support among Republicans. And we're going to get to a point where everyone's going to need the tax dollars, regardless of your belief in the plant. So it's going to have to start paying for a few things. So I think you're going to see it have a very good November 3rd, Jimmy.
And for some reason, the Republicans in Washington, D.C. don't understand that the word cannabis and jobs are actually synonymous. And even though they are keeping score on those COVID relief bills that have gotten stalled in our nation's capital. And you know what, Curt? At some point, they have to understand that this is not going away, is it?
No, and you bring up a good point. I think we're at about 250,000 jobs, give or take, certainly not counting the gray or black markets. Full legalization could put that to 500,000 easily. And they're going to be well-paying jobs. It's not just going to be bud tenders. It's going to be accountants. It's going to be CPAs. It's going to be lawyers. So again, we need revenue. We need jobs. And this has held up so well during COVID. Why not continue the momentum?
And I do really think that there's going to be a lot of jobs in the research arena as well, because they want to study this product and see its benefits, or things that perhaps they might find that they are finally negative. But this plant has been certainly looked at and researched and tested for a long time by the substance abuse community. I think there's something like 30,000 studies that have been done on cannabis, and they are still looking for a reason, a negative reason, to stop the movement. Well, it looks like the adult use question in New Jersey will pass, as polls are now reporting a 3-1 in favor of that initiative. And other states that are voting, like Montana, are also polling in favor of passing. In the meantime, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has legalization of adult use of cannabis in his budget items for 2021. So, Curt, having New York and New Jersey markets open up, along with Little Vermont, it means there's going to be a lot of attention in cannabis on the East Coast.
Yeah, and it's a good thing. If you saw Biden's tax plan for citizens, especially of New Jersey and New York, it was over 60%. 50 Cent made some news this week by saying he's going to support Trump just based on the tax plan. And again, it plays right into that. Everybody's going to want a piece of the puzzle. There's going to be a little bit of tax revenue for the federal government, the state level. It's coming. It's coming on the East Coast. It's coming in the heartland, and obviously the West Coast already has it. So let's hope for a good November push.
Indeed. And back here in Massachusetts, it was a historic week as the Cannabis Control Commission outlined the new rules related to the delivery licenses that are finally going to give an opportunity to social equity applicants. Freelance reporter Grant Smith Ellis was at that meeting, and he reports on the details. Grant?
The Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission finalized its format for adult use delivery after 3 years. Like I mentioned, there will be 2 different types of delivery operations: an Uber Eats style courier that can pick up orders at retail price from brick and mortar dispensaries and deliver them, or a different model called the delivery marijuana delivery operator model, where those companies can purchase products at wholesale from cultivators and manufacturers, stored in a secure vault, deliver it directly. Those companies and the couriers are limited to 2 total licenses per entity to avoid any monopolization concerns. And on top of that, the priority period for these licenses will be for 3 years, during which only economic empowerment and social equity applicants, those most harmed by the war on drugs, will be able to run these delivery licenses. They need to be 51% owner controlled by an EE or an SE during that period, which is excellent as well.
That's a great description of the 2 different licenses. As we said on cannabis.net, that got a lot of attention here in Massachusetts. It is the Golden Goose license to steal. The SC and EE applicants have a 3-year head start to establish a basically moving dispensary or dispensary on wheels that can deliver, buy at wholesale, sell at retail. Some pushback from those people were that I shouldn't say that. I don't understand that the expenses are the same. But in the end, I would very much think those licenses will be in very high demand.
Indeed. And needless to say, this is the biggest win for social equity and economic empowerment advocates since adult use was passed in the Bay State 2016.
Absolutely. And you also heard about the second license where now dispensaries will be able to use that Uber Eats model to have deliveries. I don't know how that's going to work, how much you can take away from a dispensary. Let's say you charge $2. What are you going to charge the delivery? $3 to $4. There's going to be some sort of ceiling before a client's going to call the SC or EE applicant service instead. So they're going to be a little boxed in on their margins from those SC and EE applicants' license.
I think in a lot of ways it's a victory for social equity as a concept and for social equity and economic empowerment applicants, because the original format for delivery licenses was just an Uber Eats format. And in that format, the delivery company has to give all of the profits on every transaction to the brick and mortar dispensary and then charge a delivery fee. Because of the addition of the wholesale model, the marijuana delivery operator model, it actually allows these equity companies to build a fiscally sustainable business. And the modeling that was done by some of the equity applicants during the process of developing these regulations demonstrated that without the wholesale model, every equity delivery company would have been out of business within 12 months, which is terribly dangerous.
One state that just opened up their adult use market is the great state of Maine. A new reporter for Weed Talk News is our friend from Weed Buds Radio, Rye Russell. He has our Maine cannabis report. Rye?
Your main man here, Rye Russell from Weed Buds Radio, with your main cannabis report for Weed Talk News. This week, let's start with the numbers. After 4 long years of waiting, Maine finally opened its doors on October 9th to the adult use market. Retail shops were allowed to start selling flower along with other products to anyone over the age of 21 with a valid form of identification. At the close of Maine's first full weekend, sales for the 9 licensed retailers participating in this opening topped $250,000, bringing in around $25,000 for the state. Not everything is rainbows and unicorns in the Pine Tree State. Nope. 2 small Maine businesses are now suing Maine's Department of Administrative and Financial Affairs, the department tasked with oversight of Maine's cannabis market. The lawsuit alleges that the department failed to follow state law in illegally awarded out-of-state firms licenses to participate in the adult use market. Opposition to this lawsuit states that Maine law violates constitutional rights and will be fiercely challenging these allegations. Also named in this lawsuit is out-of-state companies such as Theory Wellness, Cannabis Cured Cultivation, Mainly Baked, Northland Botanicals, joined by a few others. And rounding out our main report today, we are still seeing major setbacks in the supply chain driving up the price for Maine's recreational sales debut. Due to low supply and lack of testing facilities, we are seeing wholesale prices reaching upwards of over $4,000. With over 430 applicants in the process, we're seeing much enthusiasm for this anticipated and growing market. Thank you for tuning in to your Maine Cannabis Report. I'm Rye Russell from Weed Buds Radio, reporting for Weed Talk News.
Here's a few more news notes around the United States. Harborside of California acquired a majority stake in FGW Haight. That's a dispensary in San Francisco. Harborside is a publicly traded company on the Canadian Stock Exchange. Meanwhile, Nevada's Cannabis Compliance Board is starting to fine licensees who have broken that state's compliance laws. The Nevada Medical Group is facing a fine of $255,000 because they discovered 6 employees who were working with expired licenses. The fine is one thing, but the commission might actually pull their license. Now, Curt, that's a little extreme, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's an overreaction to the public wanting to have strict regulations, especially with cannabis on the road and going to appointments and being delivered. Sounds like it's a little aggressive, but maybe they're trying to make an example out of the first person. And guess what? There won't be any expired license for the next 5 years in that state. They'll make sure everybody's caught up to date.
Absolutely, and check those licenses and those expiration dates twice. Well, now it's time for the DC Report with Phil Adams from our friends at the Vote Pro podcast out of our nation's capital. Phil?
Hi, I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast, and this is the Weed Talk News DC Report. Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris has reaffirmed her support for decriminalizing cannabis. Harris said that if she and Joe Biden are elected, decriminalization would be a priority for their administration. During her run for the nomination, Harris was an outspoken advocate for full legalization, a policy not supported by Joe Biden. Since joining the ticket, Harris has scaled back her calls for legalization. At a recent virtual town hall event, however, Harris sought to reassure reform advocates that more significant change would be forthcoming, saying, quote, "This is no time for half-stepping." A coalition of state and local cannabis regulators are demanding that U.S. House representatives make passing a marijuana legalization bill a priority after the election. In a letter to House leaders, the group of regulators supported by the Drug Policy Alliance said that the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act represents a solution for reforming failed cannabis policies and correcting widespread injustice. They urge leaders to pass the MORE Act when it comes up for a vote. In more news from just beyond the Beltway, the Commonwealth of Virginia may soon be following the lead of neighboring Maryland in banning warrantless searches and seizures prompted solely by the odor of marijuana. The Virginia House and Senate have both approved measures to prohibit such searches by law enforcement officers. Governor Ralph Northam is expected to sign the prohibition into law. Supporters believe this will significantly reduce unnecessary interactions between police and otherwise law-abiding Virginians. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams, reminding you to turn out and vote pro-pot.
One more note from the social equity front here in the Bay State of Massachusetts. We want to give a shout out to Caroline Frankel from Caroline's Cannabis in Uxbridge. They are expanding their storefront over the weekend, and more space means more weed and, of course, more social distancing. That's Caroline's, the first social equity licensee in Massachusetts. Curt, a great success story.
Yeah, and it's also that a lot of people outside of Mass don't know about the blue laws. We weren't able to buy liquor here until 10 years ago, not even, as far as on a Sunday. So to have cannabis sales and have her be able to open and be open on a Sunday is certainly a step in the right direction for progress.
And Caroline's is a friend of Snoop Dogg. You remember when he stopped by that dispensary, I believe it was, who knows if it was 2020 or 2019. I don't even know what day it is anymore. Do you remember that?
Yeah, no, it was kind of funny since for those that don't know, it's not near Boston. It's more very much on the New York border. So not an easy trek. Snoop went out of his way to get there. It wasn't just a stop in from the airport. So kudos to Caroline as well.
And I think Curt's going to have a little geography lesson. Uxbridge is right in the middle of the state. It's closer to Rhode Island than it is to New York. But that's okay.
I would say that's a little closer to not near Boston. So for Snoop to have to get there, where's he going into? Worcester Springfield International Airport?
Exactly right. I think that's what it was. Anyway, the bottom line is Uxbridge is out there and in business, and Caroline's is the place to go. Certainly a tourist destination, and that's where Snoop Dogg was over the last year, and I think that's a great story. But anyway, that'll do it for this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Curt Dalton from Cannabis.net.
Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Weed Talk Now, Weed Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, Cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge, and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.